Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Felon is Not an Option. Let's take a dive into some of these crisis management questions that we worked on this week. We also did the DSM-5 too, so I'm going to do another video for those. But I think this week we had some great discussion on how to navigate some of these crisis management questions. And I think a lot of these are from today because everybody did such a good job asking questions, asking for clarity, and also navigating the questions and finding the best answers. So let's take a look at this first question. And like always, we are going to treat these questions as if we are taking the MFT national exam. Feel free to pause this video, reveal the best answer before I say what the best answer is. And if you get the best answer right before I do, then kudos to you. A therapist is walking to their vehicle when a client with severe paranoia approaches rapidly saying, "I know that you're part of the people watching me." The client looks distressed and unpredictable, but the therapist is about 10 feet away from her car and 20 feet away from the building. So what is the therapist's best response? I know we had a lot of questions when it came to this question right here. And when it comes to questions like these, we need to pay close attention to, is there a symptom? Is there a diagnosis that is being presented that lets me know if I do one wrong move, maybe this client might hurt me, right? So if we go back and we look at the question, severe paranoia, oh my God, that tells me that, okay, something is going on. This client, I don't know if it's a he or she, it doesn't say, is rapidly approaching you. So when you see that, if I take off running, or if this client is rapidly walking towards me, if I get to my car, am I going to get the car door open fast enough before he or she does something to me, right? So A says continue toward the vehicle and attempt to drive away. Well, if you go towards the vehicle and you're going to attempt this, is that client going to then have access to grab you and do something to you? Right? C says try to explore the delusion to calm the client. First of all, you're walking to your vehicle. Is there other people outside? Like, we need to gauge the scene and see what's going to happen, right? D says, so C is going to be out. I'm not exploring no delusion with you in a parking lot. I'm not doing that, right? D says stand next to the client to show you aren't a threat. Okay, first of all, this client is rapidly approaching you. So how are you going to stand next to this client to show them that you're not a threat? He has paranoia. You can't. Don't try to experiment in a parking lot with a client. Take it for what it is. Turn back toward the building and seek help while keeping space. You need to get back to the building, because if you can get back to the building, then there might be someone else there that can help you. I get it. Some of these questions are just like, well, I wouldn't do that. Don't have that mindset. Choose the safest answer response that is going to keep you safe while also trying to at least keep your eyes or keep your distance from this client, right? 15-year-old Elijah reports increasing conflict with his 80-year-old sister. Mid-session, he says, honestly, sometimes I picture choking her until she stops screaming. He appears embarrassed, but admits, I don't know why I get these thoughts, but sometimes I just want to do it for real. He denies wanting to kill her, but states, I want to hurt her when she won't listen. He also says, my parents will freak out if you tell them. They'll punish me and take away everything. He becomes tearful and says, my parents probably would miss her since they love her more. So we got a lot that's going on in here. We have a lot of threats that are going on. We also have a lot of this 15-year-old kid that is like almost fighting with himself. Like, if I do it, this happens. I don't know why I feel this way, but I just do. So what are we going to do first when it comes to this? And I think somebody had said they were between A and B. And I'm like, when I looked at that, I chuckled, because I'm like, where are we in 2025 where we're going to normalize that choking your little sister is the best way to go? So you're going to get rid of that. Avoid choosing answer responses that has you normalizing violence. Do not ever choose an answer response. Normalize intrusive thoughts. Yeah, they're intrusive, all right, until he acts on them, right? And reassure him that teens feel that way. It's not normal for a teenager to feel that way. Get rid of A. C says complete a violent risk assessment and keep confidentiality. You cannot keep confidentiality. Be very careful with answer responses that will say something like, oh, maintain confidentiality. When you have threats that are being presented in a question, confidentiality is automatically out of the window, because you know that confidentiality needs to be breached when the client is a harm to themselves or to other people. So you can't keep it, get rid of it. The first part of C is correct, but the other part is wrong, therefore making the entire C response incorrect. D says explore whether his sister has actually been harmed before and create a safety plan if true. That is not true at all. We are not going to say, oh, well, did you do something like this to her in the past before, and if so, then we need to create a safety plan. That's not how that goes. So D would automatically be out. If you go back and you take a look at B, not A, because we are not choking our sisters. B says conduct a detailed violence risk assessment and notify the parents with specific safety recommendations. This is your classic safety first question, and it needs to be treated as such. Before you choose an answer, ask yourself, is this for real? Or is this bonkers? Do I have enough evidence to support this answer response that I am now choosing? Like A, I think I commented and I said, ask yourself, is it normal for a teenager to want to choke their sister? And if it's not, then get rid of it. All right, during the individual session, 14-year-old Jordan states in a flat tone, I swear if my little sister comes into my room again, I'm going to hurt her. She deserves it. I already yelled at her last week, and I don't care if I do it again. Jordan refuses to make eye contact and begins picking at the skin on his arm. When the therapist asks him if he has a plan, he says, I don't know. Maybe I'll push her down the stairs. She's annoying. He says he has been getting into more fights at school and can't control his anger. Parents are not aware of these statements. Jordan asks the therapist, just don't tell mom, I will get in trouble. What is the therapist's best next step? If we go back and we look at the vignette, remembering we've got some threats that are going on here. We've got him being aggressive at school. We've also got him admitting that he's yelled at his sister at home before, letting us know that, even at home, he's unable to manage his emotions when it comes to his little sister. Parents are not aware of this, but should the parents be involved, since he's saying, I would push her down the stairs, right? So A says, validate Jordan's feelings. And before we get to that, when we see best next step, we're looking for the ethical responses, right? A says, validate Jordan's feelings, inform the parents, the school, explore the sibling relationship, and continue assessing anger triggers. The issue with A is that, yeah, we can validate his feelings. We can inform the parents, because we should. But it says to inform the school. Why are we doing anything with the school when the school has nothing to do with him and the issues he's having with his sister at home? Stop and ask yourself, why am I informing the school? Isn't that breaking confidentiality? Ask yourself those questions before you pick those answers. Slow down and read it for understanding. C says, validate his feelings, teach him grounding impulse controls before deciding to involve the parents. My issue with C is when it comes to questions like these, pay close attention to when they have you putting something important off. Stay away from those answer responses before deciding. Don't do it. Ignore it. Don't do that, especially when it is a safety question. D says call Child Protective Services. Why are you calling Child Protective Services, and what are they going to do? Contact the parents and have them attend the next session. That has you now putting off, again, something that needs to be addressed immediately, which is Jordan's little sister's safety. So we need to be informing the parents immediately and sharing those specific threats. Nothing else is after B, like create a safety plan or any of that. Do not always try to look for the obvious answer, because it's not always going to be there. Before you choose an answer, ask yourself, does this make sense? Is it bonkers? Is there enough evidence here that is going to support before I choose this best answer? During session, a client begins ranting about Muslims at the shopping center, stating, I'm tired of seeing them gather there. I swear I'm going to do something about it this weekend. He names a specific mall and appears agitated. What is the therapist's first obligation? Now, the thing about this question is that it's a lot of information is here, and we have enough, right? He's gave a specific group of people, the Muslims at the shopping center. He names the specific mall, and he appears agitated. He also said he's going to do something about it this weekend, but he does not say how. He doesn't mention how he's going to do something about it. Is he going to use a gun? Is he going to use a bomb? Is he going to go in there, start cutting people, knifing people, or whatever the case may be? He doesn't say that. So your first obligation needs to do what? We need to conduct a violence risk assessment. I know a lot of people chose D. That is not going to be your first step. You can, but B needs to be your first step. We have a threat here, like a threat that is like, okay, I need to find out more information. What is it that I need to do in order to stop this person from doing this? Conducting a mental status assessment is not going to help you, activate if this is going to be a duty to protect act. But conducting that violence risk assessment is, and you have the public that you need to protect, making B your best answer. Now, if B wasn't there, A would have been your best answer. If B made no sense, if B didn't, match anything that was going to be enough for you to say it was B, A could have been your next answer. Because then now it's like, okay, I've conducted this risk assessment, maybe he does have a plan. Maybe he's going to use a gun to go kill the Muslims at the mall. Now I need to call law enforcement because I have the duty to protect. That is a mindset that I want you to keep when it comes to these types of questions. As the therapist leaves the office at the end of the day, they notice a client in an active psychosis following behind them in a parking lot. The clients begin yelling, "Why are you leaving? I know you're trying to report me." The therapist is alone. What is the therapist's best next step? So this is a safety question again. You need to do what you need to do in order to protect yourself. At this point right now, this client is in active psychosis. You could be anything and anybody to this client. You need to protect yourself. Walk faster to get to your car and leave quickly. He's in a state of psychosis. The faster that you walk and he thinks that you're going to report him to somebody, this client is going to be probably chasing after you. That's high risk. Don't do it. C says, tell the client their belief is a delusion. First of all, don't ever tell a client that is in a state of psychosis that the beliefs that they are having is delusional, and it's about too late by the time you get that out of your mouth. I'm just saying, right? Because when they're in a state of psychosis, they believe what is true, whatever the case may be. It is not your responsibility to tell them that it's not real, it's fake, you're this, you're that. Please don't tell them that. Ignore the client and hope they calm down. You cannot do that. This client is in a state of psychosis. B says, turn toward the client, maintain distance, calmly state boundaries while walking back towards the building. Turning toward the client is going to allow you to keep your eyes on this client at all time. Calmly state boundaries and walk back towards the building because there may be more people in the building that can help you. Do not ever tell a client that is in a state of psychosis that it is a delusion. Do they know that it's a delusion? Not in the state that they're in. No, they think that whatever it is that's going on, it's real. Your goal for these questions is to choose an answer response that is going to de-escalate the situation, not escalate it. Your goal is to find an answer response that is going to protect yourself. Your goal is to find an answer response that is possibly going to protect the client, ultimately doing what? Protecting your license. That is how you view these crisis management questions. A client in psychosis becomes verbally aggressive, throws a notebook across the room and says, "I'll hurt you if you come any closer." What should the therapist do first? So now you're in a session with this client. You're in a room and he threw a simple notebook across the room. Should we be freaking out over a notebook? Hell yeah, because if he threw that notebook, he might throw the chair. Think about that, right? A says, call emergency services. Okay, and when you pick up that phone to go and call emergency services, you thought he threw that notebook the first time. He might throw that chair this time. You need to work on de-escalating the client, not escalating the client. You need to work on keeping yourself safe, right? B says attempt verbal de-escalation and assess weapons access. First of all, now he threw a notebook. Now, if he really had a weapon, wouldn't he have took out the knife or the gun instead of throwing a notebook? So no, get rid of B. D says validate the client's feelings and ask them to re-engage. I don't even allow the kids at my school. When you start throwing stuff at me, I'm not validating your feelings. I'm the one that needs to be leaving. Even at work, if I'm with the kid or whatever, and they start getting escalated, my sole goal is to protect myself. So that means either do I need to get out and call for additional staff? That is what I need to do. C is your best answer. You need to leave the room immediately. I know these questions are crazy because it's like, well, what if he's standing by the door? What if he's blocking the door? What if he's doing this? Don't add to it. It didn't say he was blocking the door, so don't add to it. C is your best answer. Leave the room immediately. Okay? De-escalate, not escalate. Protect yourself. A client experiencing some delusions stand up, paces rapidly, starts shouting, "You're lying to me. I knew you were one of them," and the therapist feels unsafe. What is the most appropriate action? So again, we have some symptoms. Some of the times when it comes to these questions, especially for crisis management, I always want to look for if there's a diagnosis that is being presented, because if there's a diagnosis that's being presented, like some delusions or like some symptoms or like some hallucinations that they're having, things of that nature, that tells me that it's much more serious. Because those symptoms, those diagnoses is really going to heighten how you're going to look at these answer responses. A says, trust your instincts, prioritize personal safety, and exit the room to get help. Okay, I like that one. B says, sit down to appear less threatening and practice grounding techniques. I just love when they throw in these questions about you trying to do some grounding techniques, some CBT work with them, and this client is sitting here threatening you. Who in their right mind is about to start doing some interventions with a client and they just threaten your life? Like, come on now. C says provide some immediate CBT for some psychosis interventions. This guy is having a delusion. She's experiencing an illusion right now. Some CBT and some grounding techniques is not going to be enough. D says call for additional staff. He has some delusions and says that you're lying to me. You're one of them. You're going to call for additional staff and escalate this client? No. You need to prioritize your safety, exit the room to get help. Do not yell for additional staff. It's going to possibly trigger him even more. At the school, and I'm just using examples because I do a lot of crisis work at the school and stuff too. At the school, when we have like a situation, we do call for staff. Because we need, more staff that is going to be there to protect us, but also to protect the other kids that are in there. Does a call to staff trigger the other kids? Yes, it does. It absolutely does. But sometimes it's all that we need to do in order to keep us safe. But for the sake of this exam, for the sake of this question, do not call for additional staff. I get it. It's very easy to get caught up with what you do at your job versus what this exam is looking for. Like I just gave you that example. If I hadn't been studying this exam, I would have picked D and said call for additional staff because that's what I do. It's not what you do. It's how you want to navigate these questions and choose the best answer that this exam is looking for, which is going to be A, trust your instinct, prioritize personal safety, and exit the room in order to get help. During session, the mother states, I know exactly when recess is. I've thought about going during lunch hour and confronting those kids. They need someone to put fear in them. She describes specific times and appears determined. What is the therapist's first legal and ethical obligation? So if we go back and look at this question, she knows when recess is, she knows about the lunch hour, and she is saying she's going to put fear in those kids. And she knows specific times, and she appears determined that she is going to do it. So what is your first legal and ethical obligation? Because you got a lot of stuff that you have to do right now. You got to protect those kids at the school, and then you also have to protect your license while you are working with this client. A says conduct a duty to protect assessment and determine if warning the school or contacting authorities is required. I like that answer. Help her schedule an urgent meeting with school administration. First of all, she's already determined to go to the school to get these kids that's been doing whatever it is that they're doing. I think this was a follow-up question to doing what they've been doing. We passed this meeting at the school by now, right? We passed that. We got a legal and ethical obligation. Helping her set up a meeting is not a legal obligation. So you get rid of B. Contact law enforcement. Yeah, you do. But before you do that, you got some steps that you need to take first, right? D says explore the emotional impact of her daughter's bullying. Look, we passed this. This is not a clinical question. This is a legal and ethical question. So D is automatically going to be out. Conduct a duty to protect assessment and determine if warning the school or contacting authorities is legally going to be required is going to be your best answer. We need a look. We have information. She knows our recess is. I thought about going to school hour and confronting those kids. They need someone to put fear in them. She describes her time and she appears determined. But we need to first, when it has these questions and they're telling you to conduct the duty to protect, conduct violence assessment, and then do this, then do that, sometimes that answer is going to be right. C says contact law enforcement. But first we need to conduct the duty to protect assessment and to determine if we need to be contacting the school or contacting authorities in order to see if it's legally required for us to do. Remember, this is a two-step question, legally and ethically. C is only legally, making C incorrect. A mother in therapy becomes increasingly upset while discussing how children at her daughter's school. So that was a follow-up question to this one. This one should have been first, and then that one should have been second. Have been bullying her autistic child. She says, I'm done with this. I'm going to the school tomorrow, and I'm going to beat up those kids myself. They regret ever touching my daughter. She appears agitated. She has some clenched fists. She's breathing heavily, and she's not receptive to any redirection. What should the therapist do first? So if you go back and look at this question, she's venting her frustration. Her autistic child is being bullied. She's telling you she's going to go to the school tomorrow. They're going to regret it. She's not receptive to any redirection for you, meaning she's not listening to anything that you have to say anymore. So what are you going to do first? A says to validate her emotions and explore the impact of bullying on her child. The issue with A is this is a clinical question. That is a clinical answer response. Right now, we don't need to be looking at a clinical answer response. We need to be looking at how we're going to protect these kids if she carry crazy ass up to the school and beat the kids up, right? So B says validate her emotions, assess the immediacy of her threat, and determine her intent to carry it out. I like that one, but let's look at the rest. C says validate her emotions, contact the school to alert them of the potential danger. D says encourage her to schedule a meeting. Oh, here we go again with this scheduling a meeting thing. Look, we passed that, okay? Just assume that she done already told them if they messing with my kids, y'all need to do something about it. The school obviously ain't did nothing about it in all this time. So we need to think about what we're going to do first. D is not what you're going to do first when she's making threats as to what she's going to do, right? So the first thing that we need to do is we need to do an assessment. Is she for real about doing this? Like, is she really determined to carry this out? We need to assess that first, right? C just says validate the mother emotions. That's not enough to validate that. If she is going to the school to beat up those kids, alerting the school is not enough to keep the children safe. Because if you alert the school, who's going to protect all of the kids? This is now a duty to protect question, right? If we are going to activate the duty to protect, we need to assess it. Does she have intent to carry it out? Then we activate that. When it comes to the duty to protect, you need to protect the public. She comes to that school saying that she about to beat up the kids. Who's protecting the kids if she gets there? We need to let law enforcement know, right? But I guess if you're thinking about it like this, like what staff would let her into the building anyways if we know that that's what she was going to do? But for the sake of this exam, B is going to be your best answer. Haley, a therapist, is in an intake session with a 30-year-old client, Elizabeth. During the session, Elizabeth shares how she and her husband got into a verbal argument, which at times have escalated to the couple breaking things and hitting each other. Upon assessing further, Haley discovers that her client and her husband have 2 young children. Her client denies that her children are present during the escalations, but on past occasions she has discovered her eldest daughter outside of the door crying. Based on the information given, what should Haley do first in this situation? If we go back and we look at the question, we have Elizabeth, her and her husband have verbal altercations with each other. They break things. She's saying that the child is not there, but sometimes the daughter is crying outside of the room. So when we have these questions like these, we need to pay attention to, has the children saw it? If not, do we need to assess for that, right? A says, create a safety plan with her client in case of future escalations. Okay, what about the child? C says, end the session and call Child Protective Services immediately. Well, you don't have enough information to do that, so you would automatically get rid of C. D says, continue and gather information to investigate further to determine if child abuse actually occurred. That's jumping. That's a bit much. It's moving a little bit too fast to say it's child abuse. We need to assess for it first. Mom is claiming that, hey, she's never seen it, but they saw her crying. So now we need to assess for the child abuse before we make the phone call. Sometimes when it comes to these first questions, you need to pay attention to the order in which they are coming or get rid of the answer responses all in all. Right? First questions, put them in order in which they are received or get rid of them all in all. Maybe they don't go with the flow, right? Some of the answer responses may have you moving too fast. Some of the answer responses may have you not doing enough, or some of the answer responses may not have you doing anything at all. Put them in order in which they are received or get rid of them all in all. That is how you are going to be able to navigate the first questions. All right, everybody, that sums up the crisis management questions that we did. If anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns with these questions, I know sometimes crisis management questions kind of like, they're very tricky because they draw the line sometimes on how you're going to answer them. It's all about how you are going to navigate those questions in your mind, making sure that you know that what you are doing is going to protect you, protect the client, or protect the public when it comes to some of these questions for crisis management. If you found that this video helped you, please feel free to give me a super thanks, donate to the channel so that I can continue to help everybody else cross the finish line in passing the MFT national exam. All right, everyone. Good night.